In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 238 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is what it takes to be the best. Our quote of the day comes to us from Kobe Bryant. Great things come from hard work and perseverance, no excuses. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm really excited for today's episode, as I originally met our guest when I was in the 8th grade. Former legendary NBA head coach George Karl said that Dave Hopla is the greatest shooter in the universe. He shares some awesome stuff with us today, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Dave, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Oh, yeah, every day.
So as we said before we went live, the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. I was curious if you have either a no-quit story of your own, or perhaps you encountered a really challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Oh, I have a million of them, but the one that resonates most with me was when I was in high school. I moved from New Jersey to Baltimore, Maryland. And 9th grade, I thought I'd be going to high school, but I had to go to a junior high. And so I went to junior high for a year and then over to high school as a sophomore and went out for junior varsity basketball. I made the team, didn't play much. And then my junior year, between my sophomore and junior year, I went to basketball camp and I worked really hard and I started keeping track of my shots. And I had two goals as a junior. I wanted to make varsity and I wanted to start on varsity. And I went out for the team and I was cut. I mean, I was devastated. And but I didn't quit, and I had some other friends of mine that also were going out for varsity and they got cut, but they wouldn't, play JV as a junior. I guess their egos were too big and everything. But I stayed with it, and like I always joke about it, I says, when you're in JV as a junior, you have no ego, and you're not very good if you're on JV as a junior. And I say that it's against the law in 32 states, but I stayed with it, and then by the time I was a senior, I was one of the better players in the area and everything, and it made me even work harder. I mean, I didn't quit, it just made me okay. I got to practice even more.
Yeah, I think it's those times where you get cut or you don't make a team, or whether it's business or what have you. I think it's those tough times that really obviously make or break you. And obviously he went ahead to have quite a successful career. So I wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little about who you are and what you're doing today.
Yes. I teach people how to shoot a basketball. I've been running Dave Hopla shooting camps for over 33 years now. Worked in the NBA with a number of teams. The most recent team I was with was the Detroit Pistons. Prior to that, I was with the New York Knicks, the Washington Wizards, and the Toronto Raptors and everything. So, and now I've also branched out into doing, motivational, inspirational talks. My talk is called Shooting for Success. I shoot the ball the entire time and tell people how I became successful. George Karl, I love his quote. He calls me the greatest shooter in the universe, and I sort of like that tag. I mean, it's even better than being in the world, the universe. So, and one of the things I've been doing is I've been charting my shots, since the time I was 16 years of age. And I tell people you can't improve on something if you don't measure it.
So I have to ask you that because I think that's remarkable. But just touch on that for a second. So you've been charting all your shots since the age of 16?
Yeah, not all of them because, like in practice, I couldn't keep track of what I was doing in practice or warm ups of games and everything. But whenever I practiced on my own, whenever I worked out on my own, I've been charting my shots. And then naturally, when I lecture, I always give the book to somebody to keep track of my shots when I lecture. So I actually have two books: a practice book and a lecture book.
That's amazing. And I want to just touch on that for a second because so many of our listeners and so many people today talk about how it's difficult to track things or to follow, and they'll give what I call excuses as far as whether it's technology or it's too hard to do. So and now I've seen you, and we touched on it before. I actually went to one of your clinics when I was younger, but just for our listeners, how many shots do you typically take during one of your shooting demonstrations?
It used to be about 500 when I was younger. Now it's probably more to 400. I've cut back a little, as I'm getting older. The body wear and tear and old age, But I shoot about 400 now as opposed to 500 when I was younger.
And just for a selfish question, what's the best percentage you ever shot in one of those shooting demonstrations?
Well, I've had 246 perfect lectures. But I've done thousands of them. So, but year in and year out, I'm usually right around body temperature, 98.6 when I finish up.
That's amazing. And for our listeners who might not be avid basketball players, you look at people that shoot well in the 40, 50%. So just in case you didn't hear what Dave said, he said 98.6%. So wanted to switch lanes here, Dave, and ask you if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you choose?
Determination.
That's a great word. Interesting thing we talk about is the word success, and I think it means many different things to many different people, and I'm curious what success means to you, or how do you personally define success?
Well, I don't think success is a destination. I think it's an ongoing journey. Too many people think, they hit a plateau. I think that we can do more and we can reach higher grounds.
I love that, and I think the question is interesting because for different people, it might be monetary, it might be physical,
Sure.
might be spiritual, business, whatever, and that's perfectly fine. But I love what you said is it is an ongoing journey, and I think so many famous people have spoken about getting to the dollar amount or getting to a physical aspect. It's not the definition, but what it is actually the journey along the way, and I'm glad you touched on that. I wanted to pick your brain, and one of the things that we've digested the last probably 2 to 2.5 years of our show is the importance of a morning routine. And I was curious if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
Oh, I sure do. First thing I do in the morning, I get up and I have a little quiet time. I spend some time with the good Lord, read my devotionals, the Bible, and I write a little note. I have a little notebook, and every day I write a little note to my daughter, who's 14 now. And she looks forward to getting them at the end of each month and everything. And it's my time, and it prepares me for anything that's going to happen during the day.
That's awesome. And I know you do a lot in obviously the speaking world, both sports and business. And I'm curious if you have read something recently or if you're currently reading something that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I'm actually reading right now. I'm reading a basketball book, naturally, right? How ironic is that? But I just attended a speakers summit what's today? Today's what, Monday? On Thursday, I just went to Fort Myers to hear JT Fox give a seminar, and he's one of the leading world wealth management coaches and everything. So it was a very enlightening day. It was from 9 o'clock till 5:30 in the evening. So it was a well spent day. So I'm going to probably pick up his book and read that. Actually, it's on my list to do today is go to Barnes & Noble, but it's called Underdog Millionaire.
Now, what basketball book are you reading?
It's called Pounding the Rock. It's about a high school coach in New York City and all the trials and tribulations he's going through coaching a high school basketball team, in the inner city. And all the challenges they have, uniforms, gym time, getting from A to B. The public transportation taken to get to a game and everything. It's great book so far.
So as I know your professional career and you touched on some of the NBA teams you've worked with, I wanted to get your perspective of the idea and the concept of what it takes to be an elite athlete or the best, one of the top basketball players in the world, and what's the difference between the best and everybody else?
Well, I'm going to use the example of Kobe Bryant because I've said this, he's been a blessing and curse in my life. I worked Kobe out his first few years in the NBA. His agent was Orrin Tellem, who's a friend of mine, and I used to work Orrin's athletes out. And I worked Kobe out at 17, and you know he was such a great athlete and everything, skilled and everything, but he paid attention to detail. Like when you were correcting him, his eyes were like laser like focus on you. And he was like, teach me, show me, coach. I want to be the greatest player to ever play. So not only was he, great basketball player, his attention to detail was second to none. And, he was never late for a workout. He always wanted to do more. And that's the difference. So everyone's like, what was Kobe like? And I'm like, nothing like you. I don't mean that, everyone says, I want to be like Kobe. No, it's easy to say that. But we worked out at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was after he went out on his prom date with what was her
Oh
name?
yeah,
Think it,
yeah,
Brandy.
Brandy.
Brandy. And he was at the gym at 5 o'clock the next morning working out. And then just his like I said, his focus, attention to detail, and no excuses, never late, and it's just like I've had that, and everybody else has been a disappointment since then because they don't work as hard, they make excuses, they show up late, or they blow it off, and it's like, how can you expect to be great, you know, if you're not willing to put the time in it and to become great? It's easy to say you want something, but then you have to go out and you have to work for it.
I love that, and I'm a big fan of Kobe Bryant. And one of my past guests, Alan Stein, used to work
Yes, yeah, I
basketball
know Alan
camps,
very well. Yeah,
and he shares some great stories about how Kobe was always the first person in the gym, and if a practice started or a workout started at 5 a.m., he'd already be there for half an hour in a full sweat.
right. I read with Alan, and we spoke about it when he said at 4:30 in the morning, to work out.
That's
So
crazy, and I'm glad you touched on that because I think that probably goes hand in hand, not just with Kobe, but with other people that are the best of the best in their field or endeavor. I think they just do things to a different level. But your comment about Kobe's attention to detail is exactly what Alan said about a few times he got a chance to watch him work out. Is he was
right,
just amazing at those details, and he had said a
right,
story that he spoke to Kobe after one of the camps and said, your workout was extremely basic, and don't take this the wrong way, Kobe. But he
right.
said Kobe looked at him and said, "Why do you think I'm the best basketball player in the world?"
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So
And it's amazing. Like I always tell people, fundamentals never go out of style. And it's the same thing in the business world. When businesses start failing, what do they say? Let's go back to the basics. Well, if they're so important, why do we leave them?
that's I could not agree more. And I think so many people try to shortchange things or try to do things differently. But like you said, the fundamentals and the basics, they never lose, and they've been the fundamentals and the basics for decades and decades for a reason.
Right. Exactly.
So we talk about the word accountability often, and I wanted to get your perspective on what accountability means to you.
Well, accountability to me is like, doing the right things when no one else is around. It's easy to be accountable. I can be somebody different in your presence. What am I doing when I'm not with you? Can you trust me to do the right things?
I think that's an awesome definition, and just like the success question, there is no right or wrong answer, and everybody has their own little spin, and I think it's awesome. I know you talked about your junior and senior year in high school, and I was curious if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself just one piece of advice. What would you tell the 20-year-old Dave?
That I should have worked even harder.
Really, as at the level you got, wow, that would be difficult to see you working harder than that. I think the level you've got to.
Well, I always think, the big thing now is, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable and everything. I just think that we have, we put limits on ourselves, and I think we can expand those limits. And we just have to push ourselves mentally and physically even farther and farther. Like I always say, nothing's impossible. It just hasn't been done yet.
No, I love that, and I think the thought too, along with the uncomfortable component, is the mind gives up before the body does.
Exactly right. That is so true.
So, if I could magically have the opportunity to give you a dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you pick and why?
It would be Jesus, and just you know, just to be in the presence of someone that great and someone that's never sinned and everything. I just think it would be, just unbelievable, unforgettable experience.
So, for our listeners that would like to connect with you or follow you or find out more about some of your shooting demonstrations, what's the best way for them to do that? And are you also active on social media?
I'm not the biggest on social media. I'm getting better at it and so forth. But best way to, contact me would be, on my Gmail account, dhopla. That's DHOPLA 99 at gmail.com. Also, I am on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Not so big on Instagram and stuff. So I always tease the kids at camps. I said, I'm a dinosaur with this stuff. I have facelift. I tell them. I said I'm on Insta Leader, but it's just it's become overwhelming. There's just so many different sites now. Like people say, I tried to get in touch with you. I don't check that stuff all day long. I said the reason why I'm great at what I do is I spend doing what I do, not social media posts and everything. I don't have a videographer. I mean, I go to the gym after I do my devotionals and read the Bible and write my letter to my daughter. I go to the gym and I work out, and I get my shots up, and then I come back and clean up my emails and everything. Then I go back to the gym and ride the bike and all that stuff. So I have my routine, but I don't have time to be like posting all this stuff and cutting and pasting. And it's like I don't know how these people do it. It's like crazy. And plus, I mean, I'm 62 years old. All this stuff is like my daughter has to show me how to use the phone half the time.
So I have to ask you this, as you said you were called the greatest shooter in the universe. I wanted to just kind of see if you could break down in your post high school and through college and after, how many hours a day were you shooting and working on your game on average?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a routine. When I was a senior in high school, I used to make 200 shots before school started. And then, then we had practice or whatever. And after practice, I would go to the YMCA and close the Y. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, I'd spend there. But the big time and the best time to improve is in the off season, the summertime, And I would be at the courts. I used to have a routine. I used to go up to the courts. I had a little red wagon. I'd have my boom box. I'd have 3 basketballs I'd go up with, and I'd dribble up with gardening gloves, and I'd get to the courts and I'd work out from 7 to 11 o'clock, doing ball handling, passing drills. How about that? Yeah, passing drills. That's a lost art now. And then, I'd had my little routine, and then I would go home. I get on my bike, and I used to ride to the YMCA because at noontime, from 12 to 1:30, all the college kids that had summer jobs and all the older guys were, working at General Motors or they would play at the YMCA. And I think, that was the best thing for me, playing against older guys. And then I would come home and then I'd play in a league, either, different leagues or pick up ball in the evening time. So I spent a great deal of time on the courts and I look forward to lunchtime playing against the older guys because you learn so much from them. They had been college basketball players or very good high school players that still played, and you just hope that you got picked up, and you wouldn't think of like turning the ball over with those guys. And then the other thing is, like if you lost, you had to sit. If one of those guys only played one game during his lunch hour, he'd be really pissed off about it. So the competitive nature, and I think a lot of it, we talk about this generation being soft and everything. It's same thing in AAU now. You go away, you're going to play 5 games this weekend. Have an AAU tournament where you lose, you go home.
I love that. I think that would change a lot of the dynamics and some of those
And
challenges
the mindset, like you got to win this. You don't want to go there all that way and then turn around and come home. But oh no, we lost. We got another game at 1:00. No, we lost. We got another game at 5:00.
It's the mentality of everybody, gets a trophy and that type of thing. But I think there's so much overlap in sports and the real world where, you don't always win. And I think the challenge is, how do you put yourself to that test where, and I think you described it. So before we let you go, Dave, I wanted to ask and see if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
What I'd like to say is, believe in yourself, surround yourself with people that believe in you, and get rid of all the negativity in your life. Whether it's people, your attitude and everything. And I'm positive on everything. Like I never say I'm doing good, pretty good, okay. I always tell people I'm phenomenal, fantabulous. That's one of my favorite words. Doing great, awesome. And what I always say is nobody remembers good, but greatness leaves a legacy. And what I use is like I always say, you ever see a good movie before? And they're like, yeah. You can't remember the name of it. But a great movie, you know everything about it.
I love that. I think that is amazing advice, and I definitely would recommend our listeners to check you out. And I truly, truly appreciate you spending some of your time with us today, Dave.
Well, the pleasure was all mine. I thank you for reaching out and wish you all the best.
Thank you for listening to episode number 238. When it comes to what it takes to being the best, Dave Hopla definitely knows. I love how he shared his definition of success being a journey and not a destination, which is something that many of our incredible guests have also said. Although I personally believe that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, it would be hard to argue that Kobe Bryant wouldn't be in the running. Dave shared an awesome story about working with Kobe Bryant the first few years of his professional career. I found it interesting that he shared that the night after Kobe's senior prom, he was in the gym with Dave at 5 a.m. the next morning getting after it. Dave described Kobe's attention to detail as second to none. He also explained that Kobe always wanted to do more, he was never late, and very simply, he just wanted to be the best. Dave said one thing that I thought was so important. He mentioned how it's easy to say that you want to be the best, but everybody isn't willing to put in the work. In his parting words, Dave shared something that is near and dear to the No Quit Living family. He stressed the importance of believing in yourself, surrounding yourself with people that believe in you, and getting rid of negativity. So as we wrap up today's episode, I'd like you to take a quick look at your own life. Do you believe in yourself? Do the people you surround yourself with inspire you, motivate you, and believe in you? If not, I challenge you today to focus your attention, your time, and your efforts both on those positive people and positive things that will lead you to your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.